Money FM 89.3, best of breakfast. Mind your business, only on Money FM 89.3.
Welcome to The Breakfast Show. Audrey Seek here with you, helping to mind your business. Now, digital ads, they're everywhere on our phones, on YouTube, social media, even when we're doom scrolling late at night. Businesses pour hundreds of billions into them every year to grab our attention. But here's the problem. Not every dollar is well spent. Some ads end up in places they shouldn't, next to fake news, violent content, or irrelevant sites. Others never even reach real people. They're often triggered by bots or hidden in a way where no one can see them. Globally, this adds up to over $100 billion in wasted advertising spend each year. And here in Asia, and especially Singapore, the issue is even sharper. DoubleVerify found that nearly 1 in 10 ads in Singapore show up in the wrong place, placing it much higher than the global average. So what's driving this waste, and how can businesses guard their budgets, especially as we head into peak shopping season? To unpack all of this, we're joined by Mark Zagorski, CEO of DoubleVerify, who has spent more than 20 years scaling global tech firms and now helps advertisers reduce waste and build trust. Mark, good morning. Great to have you with us here on The Breakfast Show.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you. So let's start by understanding the problem here, Mark. You know, every year we see these eye-popping figures about wasted ad dollars, more than 100 billion USD globally. So for listeners who might not know how this happens, can you maybe walk us through the main reasons why so much advertising never reaches the right audience?
Yeah, I mean, there's several reasons. Some are innocuous and some are a bit more notorious. Innocuous is, some of the technology in actually directing ads to the right context is not great. So advertisers believe they're going to be in one area but end up in another. But on the more notorious side, there is a real problem with what we call ad fraud. So there are active criminal enterprises trying to steal ad impressions and steal dollars from advertisers, and do so by using bots, by creating fake websites or fake environments. And advertisers unwittingly send ads there and pay for placements that actually never even reach a real human or in a place that is legitimate. So, as with anything, if there's a way to make money and take money in a way that's not going to be helpful, someone will try to find a way to do that. And, what our company does is help them avoid those situations.
All right. Well, fraud running rampant in the advertising space as well. And let's zoom in on APAC. We know that DoubleVerify's research shows that brand suitability violations here are about 50% higher than the global average. And that's a striking difference. So what makes this region, and especially Singapore, such a hotspot for media waste and unsuitable placements?
I think there's a few factors. The first is the APAC region is very heavily a social media region and a mobile region, right? Which creates a significant amount of opportunity for, number one, context and content that's user-generated and not aligned with a lot of brand suitability criteria, but also that it creates a significant amount of fragmentation, right? Social media is a highly fragmented and highly diversified universe. And when you have that fragmentation, it just creates opportunity for bad behavior, creates opportunity for context that is not great for advertisers. And I think both of those are factors in the APAC market that kind of drive up that negative environment. When you couple that with the growing impact of AI, and that's not just in APAC, but everywhere, in creating what's called AI slop, or, just basically massively created non-human generated content, you have a recipe for disaster.
Okay, I definitely want to get into this AI slop a little bit more, but let's look beyond the dollars and cents here for a second. Some might shrug and say, well, it's just wasted marketing dollars, no harm, no foul. But it's not just about the money. Like, what happens to a brand's reputation and consumer trust if their ad ends up next to harmful or irrelevant content?
Yeah, there's certainly the way to calculate waste, bot waste or fraud waste. And there's a way to actually come up with a number against that. What you can't come up with a number against is damage to a brand's reputation. And we work with some of the largest brands in the world, folks like Unilever and Colgate and Procter & Gamble. And these are brands that have been around for over 100 years, some of their products in APAC and all around the world. And an ad showing up next to content that's not aligned with who they are and what they stand for can ruin a brand in a matter of moments that's been built over decades, if not, more than that. So it does have a real impact on consumers' relationships with those brands and the long-term value of that brand.
Yeah, so this reputational risk feels even bigger now because the industry itself is being reshaped by technology. You talked about AI slop there, because AI is powering everything from automated bidding to creative generation. So on one hand, it's very exciting, but on the other hand, it also makes fraud more sophisticated. So how do you see AI changing both the risks and the opportunities for advertisers right now?
Yeah, you've brought up a couple great points there. On the opportunity side, AI has the ability to lower the bar for enabling even more advertisers, small businesses, mid-sized businesses, to participate by creating really rich advertising experiences, right? Television advertising used to be the world of the biggest advertisers because you had to produce a commercial, or even radio advertising, you had to professionally produce a commercial. Now with AI, you can create a commercial for many different venues on the fly in a matter of minutes that looks professionally created. So it's lowered the bar of entry, which I think is great. It's allowed for tools like we have to enable better alignment with content and context to drive better results, which is great. But on the other side, it's created more opportunities for bad behavior as well. Ad fraud is harder to catch because the criminals have become more sophisticated. There's more, like we said, AI slop, which is just massive amounts of content created by machines that no human has ever touched, and in many cases is not relevant or even accurate. So those environments are tough for advertisers to navigate. And so what we say is use AI to fight AI. And that's exactly what we do for our customers.
Okay. So Mark, tell us what to do. This timing couldn't be more critical as well. Not sure if you're a shopper, but we have 9/9 to look forward to, 11/11. Of course, there's Black Friday. Christmas is coming as well. Basically the most competitive shopping season of the year. So what's the very first step you would advise businesses to take to ensure that their ads are seen by real people in the right places during this peak?
So I think, there's always three questions that I think advertisers should be thinking about when they're going to spend money. And the first is my advertising going to drive an outcome? And what is that outcome I want, right? Is it just reach? Is it reaching people when building brand? Is it driving a sale? What is that outcome I want to get, number one? And secondly is, can I measure that outcome? And how am I going to measure that outcome, right? Is there ability to actually track through the effectiveness of my campaign? And the third thing is, if I know what I want to get out of it, and if I know I can track it, how do I trust the measurement, right? How do I trust what I'm actually measuring? And I think that's where, working with independent partners, those that are not conflicted, those that don't own the place where you're advertising, to figure out if that advertising works, I think is really. So I think, there needs to be an end point for an advertiser to better understand what they want to get out of that, and putting a process together to navigate those points through measurement and independent partnerships, I think is key.
Yeah, I think you brought up a great point, because marketers have long chased reach, right? More eyeballs, bigger numbers, but more isn't always better. So what changes when a brand shifts focus from just impressions to what you call qualified reach?
Yeah, I like to use an analogy of, there's junk food and there's good food, right? Junk food's cheap, and you can buy a lot of it for not much money. But good food, which is better for you, costs more money, right? Media is the same way. High quality media costs more than junky media, but it should be better for you too. So I think, a lot of advertisers get caught up in, I've got really cheap reach. And that's what I'm going to focus on. What you really need to do, as I mentioned before, is focus on what you're trying to get out of that campaign. And cheap reach doesn't always equal the outcome that you want. And looking at paying more for driving a better outcome, I think is an easy ROI calculation for an advertiser to pursue.
Yeah, but let's think about the smaller players here. If I'm running an SME here in Singapore, I may not have huge budgets. So how can I protect my ad spend without breaking the bank?
I mean, look, it doesn't matter whether you're a big advertiser or a small advertiser. Waste is waste. And in some cases, it's even more important for a small advertiser to focus on driving best outcome from that limited budget they have. So I think, there are the basic things that any advertiser wants to look at, which is making sure you're working with legitimate and credible sources, having a goal to what that campaign wants to deliver. But also going back to what I mentioned is knowing that quality may cost more, but it actually can deliver better results. And, we've built tools now, I mentioned AI, that can map quality with low cost and bring the two together. It doesn't need to be a mutually exclusive relationship. And through a solution that we built based on algorithmic bidding, which now I'm really going deep into the weeds here, but being able to find the best impressions at the lowest cost with the highest quality, AI can now toggle all of those different factors at once for a media buyer, no matter how big or small they are. And I think that's a real change in the marketplace.
All right. Well, Mark, you've led several global tech firms through major transitions. So what's one lesson you think entrepreneurs and business leaders who are listening in right now can maybe take from DoubleVerify's approach to trust and transparency?
There are fundamentals that never change, no matter what business you are and no matter what era you're in. And things change. AI is upending everything. However, customer relationships and trust with those customer relationships are key no matter what. And I think, independence, trust are things that advertisers are looking for more now than ever. In an era that's become more complex, more challenging, when things move incredibly fast, I think any business benefits from the fact that you need to trust your partners. You need to believe that they're independent and looking out for your best interests. And when you do those things, I think you're always in a good space.
All right. Well, trust is the name of the game. And it's clear that ad waste isn't just about lost dollars. It's about brand safety, trust, and long-term value. Mark, thank you so much for joining us this morning. It was great having you on the show.
Thank you, Audrey. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Stay with Money FM 89.3.
Money FM 89.3.